Welcome to Eternal Enigma. When you think of demons, you think of fallen angels, Lucifer and his rebellion, the watchers who took human wives, angels who chose darkness and were cast down, their celestial nature corrupted into something infernal. But there's a category of demons that nobody talks about, beings that walk hell's corridors, commanding legions, tormenting souls, serving Satan's purposes, but who weren't created as angels. They weren't part of the heavenly host. They never had wings, never sang in celestial choirs, never stood in God's presence. They were human, born of flesh and blood, walked the earth as mortals, lived, breathed, chose, sinned, and then something happened, something so catastrophic, so fundamentally corrupting, that their humanity was stripped away and they became demons, entities of pure evil, with all the power and malevolence of hell itself. Today you're meeting the demon who was human first, and the terrifying truth is, if it happened to him, the question isn't whether it can happen again. The question is, has it already? The standard theology of demons is clean and simple. Demons are fallen angels, period. They were created as celestial beings. They rebelled against God, they were cast into hell, and now they operate as adversaries to humanity and God's plan. This framework appears across Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, with minor variations but fundamental agreement. Demons equal fallen angels. But this framework has always had problems. First, it doesn't explain certain biblical passages that seem to describe humans becoming demonic entities after death. Second, it doesn't account for traditions across multiple cultures describing humans so wicked that they transformed into demons while still alive or immediately upon death. Third, it creates a theological puzzle about the purpose of hell if all demons are already fallen angels who were never human to begin with. The concept of humans becoming demons appears in several ancient sources. Jewish mystical traditions, including Kabbalah and various midrashic texts, describe specific humans whose sins were so severe that after death their souls didn't go to Sheol for judgment, but instead transformed into demonic entities. Gnostic texts describe the archons as beings that can be either fallen divine emanations or corrupted human souls depending on the text. Early Christian heresies, including certain Manichaean teachings, proposed that extremely wicked humans could become demons. Medieval demonology, particularly in grimoires and witch trial records, occasionally references demons who were once human sorcerers. The primary and most documented case is Cain, also spelled Cain, the first murderer, the son of Adam and Eve who killed his brother Abel. Multiple ancient traditions describe Cain not simply as a wicked human who died and went to hell for punishment, but as a human who was transformed into a demonic being, acquiring powers and nature fundamentally different from normal human damnation. We're going to examine the biblical account, the extra-biblical traditions, the process of transformation described in various sources, and the theological implications of a human becoming a demon. Then we'll explore other possible cases and what this means for the nature of damnation itself. The story of Cain begins in Genesis chapter 4. Adam and Eve have been expelled from Eden, they have children, and the first two sons are Cain and Abel. Abel becomes a keeper of sheep, Cain becomes a worker of the ground. Both bring offerings to God. Abel brings the firstborn of his flock and their fat portions. Cain brings an offering of the fruit of the ground. The text states, "And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard." This rejection devastates Cain. Genesis 4 verse 5 says, "So Cain was very angry, and his face fell." God asks him, "Why are you angry, and why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it." This is the first mention of sin as an entity, a force personified as something crouching, waiting, desiring to consume. Cain doesn't rule over it. Genesis 4 verse 8, Cain spoke to Abel his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. The first murder, the first death of a human being, the first shedding of innocent blood. God's response is immediate. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is Abel your brother?" Cain answers with the famous line, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" God responds, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth." This curse is unique in Scripture. It's not simply punishment, it's transformation. Cain is cursed from the ground itself. The earth rejects him. He becomes a wanderer, unable to settle, unable to find rest. Genesis 4 verse 14 records Cain's response. My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. God's reply introduces the mark of Cain. Then the Lord said to him, Not so, if anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest any who found him should attack him. This mark is never described physically, but its function is clear. It protects Cain from death while marking him as cursed. Here's where the standard reading ends. Cain wanders, marries, builds a city, has descendants including the inventors of music and metalworking, and eventually dies, though the Bible never records his death. Most theology treats Cain as a wicked human who was punished but remained human, died eventually, and went to whatever afterlife awaited murderers. But the curse contains elements that don't fit standard human punishment. First, he is hidden from God's face, which is exile from divine presence, exceeding even Adam's expulsion from Eden. Second, the mark protects him from death in perpetuity with sevenfold vengeance, suggesting immortality, or at minimum extreme longevity. Third, the ground itself rejects him, which is a cosmic rather than merely personal punishment. Fourth, he becomes a wanderer, which in ancient cosmology meant existing between realms, belonging fully to neither the living world nor the world of the dead. These elements, exile from God's presence, inability to die normally, cosmic rejection, and liminal existence between realms, are precisely the characteristics later tradition would associate with demonic existence. Outside canonical scripture, multiple ancient Jewish texts expand on what happened to Cain after the curse. These traditions preserved in Midrash, Talmud, and later Kabbalistic writings describe Cain's transformation into something other than human. The Book of Jubilees, written approximately 2nd century BC, describes Cain's ultimate fate. According to Jubilees, Cain was eventually killed when a house fell on him, but the text notes this happened long after normal human lifespan, and that during his extended life he became father to a race of violent giants. This connects Cain to the Nephilim tradition, suggesting his bloodline was corrupted beyond normal humanity. Rabbinic Midrash contains multiple traditions about Cain's transformation. One strand describes him as having grown a horn from his forehead as part of the mark, making him physically monstrous. Another describes his skin becoming dark or burning as a sign of divine rejection. A third describes him as becoming increasingly inhuman in appearance until he resembled a demon more than a man. These physical transformations mirror the spiritual transformation. As Cain became more corrupted by his sin and its consequences, his very nature changed. The Zohar, the foundational text of Jewish mysticism written in 13th century but claiming much older oral traditions, contains the most explicit descriptions of Cain becoming demonic. According to Zoharic tradition, Cain was not actually the son of Adam, but rather the offspring of the serpent, which is Samael, the demon prince, and Eve. This would make Cain half human and half demonic from birth, explaining why his offering was rejected and why his descendants were uniquely wicked. When Cain murdered Abel, he fully activated his demonic nature, completing the transformation from conflicted hybrid into full demon. This Zoharic tradition explains several puzzles. First, it accounts for why God rejected Cain's offering, not because the offering itself was inadequate, but because Cain's very nature made him unable to offer genuine worship. Second, it explains the mark, not a protective symbol placed on a human, but a manifestation of his true demonic nature becoming visible. Third, it explains his immortality, or extreme longevity. Demons don't die like humans. Fourth, it provides origin for the violent Cainite line. They inherited demonic corruption. Gnostic texts, particularly the Apocryphon of John, and related literature describe Cain as one of the archons, which are demonic rulers of the material world. In Gnostic cosmology, the archons are beings that trap human souls in matter and prevent them from returning to the divine pleroma. Some Gnostic texts describe archons as fallen divine emanations, but others describe them as humans who became so materialistic and violent that they transformed into demons ruling the physical realm. Cain fits perfectly, the first to violently take life, cursed to wander the earth, becoming a ruler of the material world's darkest aspects. Medieval Jewish folklore expanded these traditions further. The legend of the golem occasionally references Cain as the first being to misuse divine creative power, attempting to make life through his descendants in mockery of God's creation. Certain strands describe him as king of a realm of wandering spirits, neither fully in hell nor on earth, but in a liminal space between. This makes Cain not just a demon, but a demon prince, ruling over a specific category of damned or transformed souls. The common thread across these diverse traditions is transformation. Cain didn't remain human, who happened to be very wicked. He became something ontologically different. His nature changed. He acquired powers, immortality or extreme longevity, authority over other evil spirits, and a role in the cosmic structure of evil that exceeded anything a merely human soul could possess. If we synthesize the various traditions about Cain, a pattern emerges describing how a human can become a demon. This isn't instant transformation, but a process involving specific stages, each representing deeper corruption and fundamental change in nature. Stage 1 is the commission of a sin so severe it creates cosmic disruption. For Cain, this was the first murder, the first shedding of innocent blood, which the text says cried out from the ground. Not all murder would qualify for this level. What made Cain's act uniquely catastrophic was its primacy. It introduced death by violence into creation, and its nature as fratricide, killing the one you're meant to love and protect. The sin must be of such magnitude that it doesn't just violate law, but breaks something fundamental in the created order. Stage 2 is divine curse that marks the person and separates them from normal human existence. For Cain, this was being cursed from the ground itself, marked with a sign, and made a wanderer. The curse isn't punishment that eventually ends, it's transformation of the person's relationship to reality. They no longer belong to the human community. They're exiled from God's presence. They can't participate in normal human life, and they exist in a state between life and death. Stage 3 is the physical and spiritual changes that manifest over time. Traditions describe Cain becoming increasingly monstrous in appearance, developing inhuman characteristics, and exhibiting powers beyond human capacity. This mirrors demonic transformation, where the corrupted soul begins to shape the body or manifest into new forms. The person's appearance begins to reflect their inner reality, which is no longer human. Stage 4 is the acquisition of immortality or immunity to normal death. The mark on Cain protected him with sevenfold vengeance against anyone who would kill him. This suggests he couldn't die by normal means. Immortality in a corrupted state is demonic existence, eternal consciousness without hope of redemption or escape, which is precisely what demons experience. They can't die, they can't change, they're locked in their fallen state forever. Stage 5 is the development of authority over other evil spirits or corrupted souls. Traditions describe Cain as ancestor of the Nephilim, father of violent giants, king of wandering spirits, or ruler of a demonic realm. This represents not just personal corruption, but the ability to spread and govern that corruption, which is the function of demon princes and kings. The transformed human becomes not just evil, but a source and organizer of evil for others. Stage 6 is the complete loss of humanity and integration into hell's hierarchy. At this point, the being is functionally indistinguishable from demons who were originally fallen angels. They have similar powers, similar roles, and similar nature. The origin as human becomes irrelevant to their current state. They're demons, period. This process explains why most wicked humans don't become demons. Wickedness alone isn't sufficient. You need cosmic-level sin, divine curse transforming your nature, progressive dehumanization, immortality in that corrupted state, authority over evil, and final integration into hell's structure. Most evil humans die before completing this process. They're judged, damned, and punished as humans, which is terrible enough, but they don't transform into demons. But for those rare cases where all stages complete, the result is a demon who was human first, and Cain might not be the only one. While Cain is the clearest and most documented case of human-to-demon transformation, several other figures across religious traditions are candidates for similar transformation, though the evidence is more speculative or depends on specific interpretive traditions. The most prominent candidate is Judas Iscariot. The betrayer of Christ holds unique status in Christian demonology. Jesus called him a devil in John chapter 6, verse 70. "Did I not choose you, the 12, and yet one of you is a devil?" This statement is remarkable because Jesus doesn't say Judas is possessed by a devil or influenced by a devil, but that he is a devil. John chapter 13, verse 27 describes Satan entering Judas before the betrayal. Then after he had taken the morsel, Satan entered into him. Most theology interprets this as demonic possession, Satan controlling Judas's actions. But an alternative reading supported by certain church fathers suggests Judas's betrayal was so cosmically significant, selling the Son of God for 30 pieces of silver, that it completed a transformation begun earlier. Acts chapter 1 verse 25 describes Judas going to his own place after his suicide. The phrase "his own place" is unusual. Why not simply say hell or Hades? Some interpreters argue his own place suggests Judas went to a unique location or state, perhaps a demonic realm he now ruled or embodied. Medieval traditions occasionally describe Judas as a demon of betrayal and despair, invoked in certain dark rituals. The Golden Legend and other medieval hagiographies sometimes portray Judas not as a damned human soul, but as a demonic entity whose role is leading others to despair and betrayal. If these traditions reflect actual transformation rather than symbolic interpretation, Judas would be the second human-to-demon case. Another candidate from biblical tradition is Nimrod. Genesis chapter 10 describes him as the first on earth to be a mighty man, a mighty hunter before the Lord, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. Extra-biblical Jewish tradition, particularly in the book of Jasher and various midrashim, describes Nimrod as the builder of the Tower of Babel, the introducer of idolatry, the persecutor of Abraham, and eventually a king who declared himself divine and demanded worship. Rabbinic tradition describes Nimrod's ultimate fate as transformation into a demonic entity. According to these sources, when God confused languages at Babel, Nimrod didn't simply die but was transformed into a ruling demon of pride and false religion. Certain Kabbalistic texts identify Nimrod with specific demon princes governing idolatry and rebellion against divine authority. If accurate, Nimrod represents transformation through the sin of cosmic pride, attempting to storm heaven itself and demanding worship belonging only to God. Moving beyond biblical figures, certain historical persons have been described in folklore as transforming into demons. Gilles de Rais, the 15th century French marshal who fought alongside Joan of Arc before becoming a serial killer of children, was sometimes described in contemporary accounts not simply as a wicked man, but as someone who had become demonic through his crimes. Trial records include testimony describing him as possessing powers beyond normal humans and exhibiting characteristics associated with demons. Whether this reflects actual transformation or simply medieval interpretation of extreme evil is unclear. Countess Elizabeth Bathory, the 16th century Hungarian noblewoman accused of torturing and killing hundreds of young women, was similarly described in some accounts as having transformed into something inhuman through her crimes. Legends describe her as becoming a vampire or demon, acquiring immortality through bathing in blood, and continuing to exist after death as a malevolent entity. Again, whether this represents actual transformation or folkloric embellishment of historical evil is debatable. The pattern across these cases mirrors Cain's transformation: commission of sins so severe they achieve cosmic significance, physical and spiritual changes toward the inhuman, acquisition of powers exceeding normal human capacity, and ultimate transformation into an entity that functions as a demon, whether or not it began as one. The question these cases raise is whether human-to-demon transformation is limited to ancient or medieval contexts, or whether it remains possible. Are there humans alive now who have begun this process? Is there a point of no return where a living human crosses from merely wicked into actually demonic? The possibility that humans can become demons creates several profound theological challenges that traditional demonology struggles to accommodate. First implication: the nature of hell becomes more complex. If hell contains both fallen angels being punished and damned humans being punished, adding a third category of humans who transformed into demons creates organizational questions. Do these transformed human demons have authority over regular damned humans? Are they subordinate to fallen angel demons or equal to them? Does hell's hierarchy depend on origin, on power level, or on function? Traditional infernal hierarchy places Lucifer and the original fallen angels at the top, with damned humans at the bottom being tormented. But if Cain is a demon prince ruling wandering spirits, where does he fit? Is he above fallen angels because he was chosen for transformation, or below them because he started human? The texts don't clearly resolve this. Second implication: the possibility of transformation means damnation has degrees of severity beyond simple punishment. Normal damned humans experience torment proportional to their sins, but they remain fundamentally what they were: human souls experiencing consequences. Transformed demons have changed nature entirely. They're not being punished, they're functioning as punishers and rulers in hell's structure. This suggests damnation can involve not just suffering but transformation into an agent of suffering for others. This raises the question: Is transformation to demon state a worse fate than simple damnation, or a better one? On one hand, you've lost your humanity entirely and become a being of pure evil. On the other hand, you have power, authority, and a role rather than just experiencing eternal torment. Some theological traditions argue transformation is actually worse precisely because it completes the corruption. You're no longer suffering for evil, you've become evil itself. Third implication: if humans can become demons, the boundary between human and demonic is permeable in ways that challenge dualistic thinking. We like clean categories: human versus demon, natural versus supernatural, material versus spiritual. But a human transforming into a demon crosses all these boundaries. The person begins as natural, material, human, but becomes supernatural, spiritual, demonic. This suggests reality has gradients rather than firm boundaries. Fourth implication: the question of free will and determinism becomes more complex. Did Cain choose to become a demon, or did the curse force transformation upon him? The biblical account emphasizes his choice to murder despite God's warning, but it's less clear whether he chose the subsequent transformation or whether it happened to him as consequence of that choice. If transformation is consequence rather than choice, it suggests actions can have outcomes that exceed what the actor intended or understood. Fifth implication: redemption theology faces new questions. Traditional Christianity holds that Christ's atonement is sufficient for all human sin, but can it redeem someone who has fully transformed into a demon? Are they still human enough to be covered by Christ's death for humanity? Or have they crossed into a state where redemption is ontologically impossible because they're no longer the kind of being Christ died for? Orthodox theology generally argues transformation to demon state is final and irreversible. Once you've completed the process, you've passed a point of no return. You're not a human soul that could repent, you're a demon that cannot. But this position depends on asserting that transformation is complete and total, which some of the traditions about Cain and Judas seem to complicate by suggesting lingering connections to their human origin. Sixth implication: the possibility of ongoing transformation means some living humans might currently be in process. If the stages we outlined are accurate, someone could progress through early stages while still alive. They could commit the cosmic level sin, receive divine curse, begin physical and spiritual changes, and be well on their way to transformation before biological death. This means encountering them would involve facing something that's neither fully human nor fully demon, but in transition between states. This matches certain descriptions from exorcisms and demonic encounters where the person seems to fluctuate between human consciousness and something else entirely. Rather than simple possession where a demon controls a human body, it could be transformation in progress where the person is becoming demonic. We've explored the terrifying concept of the demon who was human first, examining Cain as the primary and best documented case of human-to-demon transformation. We traced the biblical foundation in Genesis, where Cain murders Abel and receives a curse that marks him, exiles him from God's presence, and transforms him into a wanderer existing between normal life and death. We examined extra-biblical traditions across Jewish Midrash, Kabbalah, and Gnostic texts that describe Cain not simply as a wicked human who died and was damned, but as someone who transformed into a demonic entity with powers and authority exceeding normal human capacity. We outlined the process of transformation involving cosmic-level sin, divine curse, progressive dehumanization, immortality in corrupted state, authority over evil, and final integration into hell's hierarchy. We explored other possible cases, including Judas Iscariot, who Jesus called a devil and who went to his own place after death, Nimrod, who built Babel and declared himself divine, and historical figures like Galel de Rais and Elizabeth Bathory, whose crimes were so extreme that folklore describes them as having become demonic. We examined the theological implications. Hell's hierarchy becomes more complex with a third category of beings. Damnation has degrees involving not just punishment, but transformation into punisher. Boundaries between human and demonic are permeable rather than absolute. Questions of free will and consequence become more nuanced. Redemption theology faces challenges about whether transformed demons can be saved, and the possibility that living humans might currently be in process of transformation. The demon who was human first challenges every comfortable assumption about the nature of evil, the permanence of human nature, and the boundaries of damnation. We want to believe demons are other, that they're fallen angels completely separate from us, that human wickedness, no matter how severe, remains human. But Cain's story and the traditions surrounding it suggest otherwise. They suggest that humans can cross lines that transform them fundamentally. That sin of sufficient magnitude doesn't just damn you, it changes what you are. that there exists a point past which humanity can be lost entirely, and something else, something demonic, emerges in its place. Cain was the first. Born human, lived human, murdered, was cursed, transformed, and became demon. If it happened once, the theological question is whether it's happened again, whether it's happening now, whether the process is still active in the world. And if transformation from human to demon is possible in one direction, the haunting question is whether transformation back is possible. Can a demon who was human first be redeemed in ways fallen angel demons cannot? Or does transformation lock you into demonic nature as permanently as creation locked fallen angels into theirs? The texts don't answer these questions definitively. They present the possibility, describe the process, document cases, and leave us with the unsettling reality that the line between human and demon might not be as uncrossable as we'd prefer to believe. Subscribe to Eternal Enigma for more explorations into the darkest corners of demonology and theology. Until next time, remember, the most terrifying demons might not be the ones created in heaven and cast down. They might be the ones who started exactly where you are, human, mortal, free, and then made choices that transformed them into something else entirely, something that hell itself welcomed as one of its own. Cain walks among demons, and he was human first.